everyone, welcome to the video. Hopefully by now you saw last week's video where we put Yamaha and Honda head to head to find out once and for all which one was the better motorcycle company. If you missed that, you're definitely going to want to go back and check that out, as the answer might surprise you. But today, we're continuing that series with the battle of the B teams, Kawasaki versus Suzuki. Will this end up as an excruciatingly specific analysis of the Kawasaki H2 versus the Turbo Hayabusa? I guess there's only one way to find out. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Kawasaki Heavy Industries has been making things that are big, fast, and heavy since 1896. Their catalog included all kinds of modest, inconsequential goods like military aircraft, trains, submarines, and oh yeah, motorcycles. The Kawasaki Motorcycle Division came to light after Kawasaki bought the failing Marugo Motorcycle Company. In 1963, the company was rebranded as Kawasaki Motorcycle Co. and developing their first motorcycles. The first significant motorcycle made by Kawasaki was the M1, which was essentially a BSA clone akin to the British Roadsters of the day. In the mid to late 1960s, Kawasaki was faced with the same criticism that Honda received from American riders, that their small displacement twins were too underpowered for the American landscape and couldn't compete with the real bikes from Harley-Davidson and Indian. As a result, Kawasaki began making plans for a larger four-cylinder motorcycle. Pushed back a few years following the release of the Honda CB750, Kawasaki came correct and released the Z1, which was a 900cc four-cylinder UJM bike. The Z1 featured all the same innovative features and amenities of the CB750 while also being significantly faster and more powerful. Beginning in 1973, the Kawasaki Z1 was named Motorcycle of the Year for the following 3 years. And with just this one motorcycle, Kawasaki became a serious industry contender. Since the Z1, Kawi has released many significant motorcycles in their tenure. They released the H2 Mach 4, which was an extremely powerful yet temperamental two-stroke triple-cylinder motorcycle that was dead set on humbling anyone who dared to ride it. Kawasaki is also responsible for redefining the sport bike segment in the 1980s with the GPZ 900 Ninja, and then went full-blown sicko mode in 2015 with the release of the supercharged 999cc four-cylinder H2. In road racing, Kawasaki has had success in both the Superbike World Championship and MotoGP World Championship, but much more in Superbike. In World Superbike, Kawasaki has won the Constructors' Championship several times in a row, most notably with Jonathan Rea, and the Riders' Championship on multiple occasions with notable riders such as Scott Russell and Regis Laconi. In MotoGP, the company has won multiple races and had several podium finishes with riders like Eddie Lawson, Randy Mamola, and Anthony West. And fun fact, Casey Stoner almost rode for Kawasaki in 2007. Can you imagine if he'd won that championship that year on that bike? I think all of history would be different. Suzuki was originally founded as a loom building company, like textile weaving looms for cotton. If you ask me, that's a little less cool than making fighter jets, missiles, and spy submarines. But we digress. Then through the early 1900s, they began to diversify and manufactured small cars, two-stroke engines for bicycles, and eventually small displacement motorcycles. Suzuki began to gain traction in the American motorcycle market in the mid-1960s and 70s alongside the rest of the Big Four. Long before the Busa, Suzuki produced many significant motorcycles. In 1971, they released the GT750, coined the Water Buffalo, which was a motorcycle powered by a 739cc two-stroke three-cylinder engine. This bike was actually the first Japanese motorcycle to feature a liquid-cooled engine, and the Water Buffalo are still highly sought after by motorcycle collectors. In the mid-70s through the 80s, Suzuki produced the GS line of motorcycles that allowed Suzuki to carve out their share of the UJM market. In the 80s and 90s, Suzuki birthed the original Squid missile with the Gixxer series of motorcycles, which are still a prominent platform for 186 mph highway pulls and nocturnal neighborhood rev bombs to this day. And then in 1999, they released the Hayabusa baby, which held the title for the fastest production motorcycle when it was released. Suzuki has competed in motorcycle racing since the 1960s, and while having moderate successes, they arguably have not had the racing prowess that the rest of the Big Four have had. One of the most notable moments in Suzuki's racing history was in the 70s when Barry Sheene dominated GP racing with the Suzuki RG500 and won back-to-back championships. Since then, Suzuki has seen various successes on the racetrack before ultimately withdrawing from both MotoGP and World Superbike in recent years. Which, let's just get an F in the chat for Suzuki leaving MotoGP after Alex Rins just crushed those last few rounds. It's just sad. So that gives you an idea of the context in which both brands came into prevalence. Like Yamaha and Honda, Kawasaki and Suzuki have also earned their place as two of the best motorcycle manufacturers in the world during the 70s and 80s, while many motorcycle manufacturers were struggling. We know that the Big Four took the motorcycle industry by storm 50 years ago and have kind of since become the gold standard for both performance, reliability, price, and much else. But how do Kawasaki and Suzuki currently stack up? In terms of public perception, Kawasaki is actually considered to be one of the most forward-thinking Japanese motorcycle companies, always gunning for that spot of the maker of the fastest and most extreme motorcycles, suitable for the most avid Monster Energy drinkers, whereas Suzuki is quite the opposite these days. They by far sell the most outdated motorcycles of the Big Four. Whether it is due to the fact that they truly can't keep up with the competition, or if it's a deliberate attempt to sell stripped-down, bulletproof motorcycles free of unnecessary frills for a cheaper price, it is impossible to deny that Suzuki's motorcycles are more antiquated. Don't believe me? Let's take a look. Kawasaki takes the W on the entry-level sport bike category without question. Ninja 400 versus Gixxer 250, that's like asking someone if they'd rather eat pizza or broken glass for lunch. Not even going to indulge this comparison any further. Then in the sort of entry-level middleweight class, you've got the Z650 or the Ninja 650 from Kawasaki up against the SV650 from Suzuki. And now while the SV650s kind of get long in the tooth, it is arguably better by a little than the 650 twins from Kawasaki. The SV is more versatile, more capable, and has a little more character. I mean, the SV is universally praised, and the Ninja 650 and Z650 are kind of panned by most. But the SV650 is on its way out as Suzuki ushers in a new parallel twin naked bike, the GSX 8S. It's the first new thing that Suzuki has done in years, but it's just the same as every other bike the manufacturers have made for a while. But that's a whole other video altogether. The GSX 8S is a 776cc parallel twin that's making around 82 horsepower. It has all the standard farkles a brand new middleweight naked bike needs to be competitive in the category, like a TFT display, quick shifter, ride modes, and you name it. Kawasaki doesn't exactly have a competitor in the class. The Z650 is quite down on power, has a 180-degree crank, and is generally kind of meh. The Z900 and Z900 RS from Kawasaki are making more comparable power to the Gixxer 750. Both have 4-cylinder engines making around 112 horsepower, while the Z900 is a little more torquey because of those extra cubes. Although the power is similar, the Z900 is arguably a better package overall. The Gixxer is pretty stripped back without many of the amenities modern motorcycles come equipped with, whereas the Z900 is a full suite of tech and electronics, preload and rebound adjustable suspension, and is available in the retro RS trim for those who aren't a fan of the robotic insect look which many a naked bike have these days. Suzuki makes the Gixxer 1000, which is a 1000cc naked bike, a category that Kawasaki doesn't operate in except for the supercharged ZH2. And if we compared those two bikes, the ZH2 would win and set fire to the corpse of the Gixxer. They're very different machines. The Gixxer 1000 makes the best case of itself for its naked motorcycle from Suzuki, featuring a frame from the Gixxer Thou. It makes 150 horsepower, has fully adjustable suspension, adjustable traction control, and a bidirectional quick shifter, which is pretty nice for $11,499. Again, folks, Suzuki comes in with the bargains for you people. It's insane. I think Suzuki is the cheapskate's bike. We can all agree on that. As we move on to the fully fared sport bikes, it is important to note that pretty much every 600 class sport bike, the differences are pretty inconsequential. The Kawasaki ZX6R is a slightly larger 636cc engine, which gives it a little bit more usable torque around town compared to the 599cc in the Gixxer 600. They both have fully adjustable suspension as well, race bike frames, all that good stuff, nice and stiff. The ZX6R comes with a quick shifter and without ABS, costs almost $1,000 less than the Gixxer, which retails for $11,699. That's $200 more than the Gixxer Thou. What? Without ABS, the ZX6R costs $10,699 or $11,999 with it. Comparing leader bikes comes with the same sentiment. They are kind of the same. Spec sheet scrutinizers sound off, but it's kind of true. And if you need to nitpick the minute details that the average rider wouldn't even notice, you're either a total nerd or in the pocket of the manufacturer. These Japanese leader bikes have inline 4 cylinders, fully adjustable suspension, IMU rider aids, top shelf brakes. You get the picture. It's like, do you like green or yellow more? That's how you make your decision. The ZX10R has a little bit more tech, but is more expensive. And I feel like with sport bikes, it is easiest to just make your decision based on which one you like the look of more or which one you can find a good deal on. Now, here's where the fun starts. If you were to compare the ZX14R to the Hayabusa, I would say get the Hayabusa hands down. Would I outright endorse the purchase of a brand new 2023 Suzuki Hayabusa? Likely not, but if you're dead set on a massive beluga whale of a motorcycle, get one that is at least recognizable and memeable. No one is ever going to point out and yell ZX14R when you ride by, but you better believe a Busa will get all sorts of attention. But what is ever better than a Hayabusa? A turbocharged Hayabusa, but you can't buy those from the factory. You have to go and win them out of some quest that you have to go after, like in some video game. You have to earn your Turbo Hayabusa. Ask me how I know. When will Suzuki take a hint? So instead, Kawasaki automatically wins the open class superbike category with the ZH2, H2, H2R, and H2SX, and really any other motorcycle they may decide to slap that supercharger on. Versus H2, that actually might go kind of hard. I'm here for it. The H2 platform from Kawasaki is insane. Not only are these bikes incredibly fast and intoxicating, but Kawasaki managed to accomplish the previously undoable task of successfully making a forced induction motorcycle from the factory that is reliable and good to ride. And that is a win. Before we come to a conclusion, let's look at a few other motorcycles from each manufacturer and see what we can determine. As far as metric cruisers are concerned, no one really cares, do they? I mean, can we be honest? Vulcan fans are a lot louder than Boulevard fans, that is for sure. I'm not sure if I've ever heard anyone mention the Boulevard on my channel, ever, or maybe I did, but I just ignored or internalized it. Either way, I feel like Kawasaki is at least trying a little harder to modernize the metric cruiser for a younger audience with bikes like the Vulcan S. For adventure bikes, again, does anyone really care? Suzuki has a lot more models of the V-Strom, but it would make it easier to find a specific motorcycle best suited for your needs. But really, head-to-head V-Strom 1050 versus the Versys 1000, you'll find that they follow a similar pattern as the rest of the bikes we've compared today. The Versys has more features, but is more expensive. Moving on to dual sport bikes, the KLR versus the DR650. Look, the KLR is going to win if you're trying to do more adventure touring, but the DR650 is a little lighter and better off-road. They're kind of different, but the KLR has been updated and has fuel injection now, which is a huge point in its favor. That paired with its more diverse capabilities, I think the KLR takes the cake. As for the Suzuki DRZ 400 versus the KLX 300, the DRZ is probably a better motorcycle in terms of performance capability based purely on the engine size, but the KLX is newer, fuel injection, has a 6-speed transmission, and the ability to evolve. The DRZ is likely never going to change, so is it stifled in its ability to advance in the category. While the KLX platform has been updated and has room to continue to see advancements. I did say in my beginner bike video that I think the DRZ 400 is the best beginner bike you can possibly get, so take that with a grain of salt. So where does that leave us? If you want me to sum up this in a tiny little bow, Kawasaki is better. They make more exciting bikes, they continuously improve and innovate, and they have far more diverse motorcycles. While there are some moments when a Suzuki might be a better buy for the incredibly price conscious, their motorcycles are a little stale and predictable. They're great bikes, there's no denying that, but they don't get people that excited for the new bikes that Kawasaki does. We'll see how the GSX 8S impacts the middleweight market, but the jury is still out on that. And Kawasaki makes the H2. You can still buy that, like, come on. Suzuki Simps in the audience below, please comment about your experience and try to avoid using the words budget, analog, or value driven. Good luck. Fact: the Nobel Peace Prize is named after the inventor of dynamite, Alfred Nobel. Ironic.